Hello, you fountain pen sketchers, you. Today, I'm going to draw some handcuffs. I have a friend in Germany who seems to like these things. I don't quite know why, but he seems to like them. I guess I like them too because I have a pair. I had developed a font using handcuffs, and on my website you can probably see it somewhere, but there was a font that I designed where by arranging the pair of them in a particular way, like that became a B. That was an O. That was could be a Q. There was a way that I organized these things where by using the laws of perspective, see that view is different from that view. The laws of perspective allowed me to have more variety of letters, though I don't think I ever actually finished the entire font. So anyway, I've chosen to do a couple of these drawings for you. You can watch me do them. And I'm using this pen. It's a Waterman from the engraving on the side says 1939 to 1945. So, and it's Dashwood is the name. So during the years of World War II, someone named Dashwood owned this pen. And why those dates are on there, I don't know. So presumably this pen is from 1945 or later. It could have been 1946, and I don't know, who knows what. 1945, we'll say, is when this pen was engraved. This is a Waterman Commando pen. These were made or they were also called emblem pens. Commando pens were made for our boys in blue, or whatever color the armed forces were in. The nib, let me just explain a little bit about the nib. The nib is a Waterman Rigid, which are normally pens that I really don't like, nibs, because they're like writing with a nail. And they're very, very stiff, so you can make carbon copies with them. But this one, luckily for me, has a little tiny crack from the breather hole going back. You can't see it on the actual thing because it goes out of focus, but on the maybe you can if I do this. So maybe you can see the crack. There's a little tiny crack, and I could have it welded shut or something like that, but why bother with that? I'm just going to draw with it anyway, and it's going to be fine. It has a slightly flexible line because of that crack. If it didn't have that crack, it would be very stiff. But what's nice about it is slightly broad. And I thought drawing my, whatever these are, handcuffs with a sort of stiff nib would be kind of fun. So what I'm going to do here is just arrange these and do a still life. I'm going to try to show it so you can see. That's boring. That's slightly more interesting. Let me draw that. And I'm going to try to, right now the camera, that thing right there is in between my head and the drawing table, so my drawing, so I can't quite see what I'm doing. Let me add some light. There we go. So I'm going to see if I can do this drawing. Today I'm going out with the Boston Urban Sketchers, and we're going to sketch at the Fogg Art Museum, Harvard's Fogg Art Museum. And that'll be fun, I hope. So the guy in Germany that likes these handcuffs is, I could maybe do his initials. PT. I don't know if he has a middle name. Do Germans have middle names? So I could do a P and a T. I'm looking at this and I'm wondering how do I make a T out of these things? So this pen, when I'm done drawing with it, I'll have to decide whether it's something I want to sell or not. I mean, yes, I can sell anything, but do I want to sell a pen that has clearly a damaged nib? I don't mind selling pens that have, missing clips and things like that. That doesn't bother me, but because of, I don't want the working part of the pen, the clip, I think is something that I maybe need to be more concerned about. I do have a neighbor in my building is a lefty, and she's a calligrapher, was an artist and a calligrapher, and she, being an artist, we often live on a budget. We don't want to spend a lot of money on things because we don't have a lot of money to spend. And she was writing with one of my pens, and she really liked it. And I said, okay, well, that pen is going to be $60. And she sort of balked at that. And I looked at the pen again to try to see, is there a way that I can make it cheaper by putting it in a pen that, in a body that maybe was cracked or broken. And see, look at that ink, smeared it all over the place. And, is there a way to make a pen cheaper? There's always ways to make pens cheaper. By putting the nib that someone likes in a pen that has cosmetic damage to it. And so anyway, blah, blah, blah. I'm losing my point in my story. Anyway, I looked at the pen that she was writing with, and I noticed that the nib had a crack in it, which is why one of the reasons why it was really, really flexible was it was a flexible nib, but it was very flexible because there was a crack, similar to the one I just described, going from the breather hole back. So I thought, oh, damn it, the pen's broken. But I said, well, you really like the way it writes, right? And she said yes. And I said, okay, fine. Pay me $20, $25 maybe it was, which was essentially what the scrap value of the gold was. And I said, I'd rather have this pen die with its boots on than just bringing it over to the gold scrap place now. You can continue to work with it, and when it dies, I'll supply you with another broken nib, because I have lots of broken nibs. Let me just show you if I can find it. I have a big drawer full of broken nibs, and some of them are broken in a way that cannot be used at all, but some of them are broken in the way that the pen is still usable, and it's fragile, but more fragile rather, but it's still usable. So this pen, as you can see, I'm able to get thin lines, thick lines, varied lines, thin to thick, based on pressure. And again, that's partly due to or for the most part due to the fact that the pen has a crack in it. So let's try a different pose here. As you can see, I'm drawing on silver paper, and this paper has slight metallic specks in it, I guess, is what's causing it to be reflective. So it's kind of an interesting surface to write on, because it has a little tiny bit of tooth to it, and though I feel a little bit like, am I damaging the pen nib, because I'm writing on, for lack of a better term, I'm writing on sandpaper. So clearly if this was more textural, it would be damaging the pen. I really don't think I'm harming it here using this one. See, this view that I'm drawing here is much more interesting. The highlights, as you can see, this area of that area of the handcuff is much brighter. Why don't I draw this in correct perspective? One of the things I have difficulty with is drawing arcs. I can calligraph them fine if I don't have to be exact, but when I have to be exact, then it's really hard for me. Part of these things are supposed to represent shadow, and I probably should have the shadow lines going in a different direction. Anyway, these drawings aren't very interesting, but I am trying to, as with each of these drawings I am trying to describe some element of my love of using fountain pens. And I don't know whether this particular video has anything particularly new that my other videos don't have. Oh, of course it would help if you could see what I was doing. One of the things about drawing metal is, the metal isn't going to look shiny unless you darken. The lightest area is this bright reflective area on the metal. Well, unless you darken the background, that area isn't going to show up. I don't know if you can hear the howling cyclone bomb we're having here in Boston today. I like how the weathermen have to come up with new names to describe yet another storm. It's not just a storm, it's a bomb or a blast. It's like, just call it a storm, for God's sake. How difficult is it? Well, as you can see, my mind is wandering. Trying to get that light part there, you see right there. There's a point at which you just love, or I can't blame everyone else with my issues. I just like making lines with pens. It's just plain fun. You don't it doesn't have to be meaningful. You know, art. Yeah, it's nice if art has meaning and tells you about the human condition, and or that drawing you did looks like that tree or that dog or that person or that building. But sometimes it's just nice to push ink around on a page with a pen. See, that sort of has that shiny bit. When I am done with this drawing, I make another little video showing some of the drawings I did with very, very fine pens. But I'll save that for a few minutes from now. So it's about just making lines. So we'll do one more. How's that for a composition? Okay, so we've got that, and we've got this, we've got that, and we've got that. This, like that. It's not quite as much fun as drawing battleships. I watched a documentary last night on Saul Steinberg. Saul Steinberg is my first artistic influence was Saul Steinberg. My dad had my parents had a book called The Art of Living, and Saul Steinberg's cartoon, it was a collection of his cartoons, and it looked like a coloring book for kids, and there are pages that I colored in. And anyway, I just always love his drawings, and what a brilliant artist he was. And why am I mentioning him? Just the calligraphic line, maybe. I don't know what made me suddenly think of him. I'm dipping this pen. I've done this entire drawing without re-dipping it. I don't have a sack in this pen yet, and so I dip it in the inkwell, and all of this is with one dip, as it were. I'll add another dip. I could have gone further, but I'll add another dip. I'm using purple ink. The ink, I have lots of ink on my desk, and I'm forgetful and a slob and lazy and everything else, and my ink dries out or evaporates. And I also have many, many quarts of antique ink from the older than I am, ink from probably the 40s, quart bottles of ink, and I do use that. When I'm testing out pens, rather than using a $10 bottle of ink this size, I'll get out my quart bottle of Schaefer Royal Blue from 1950 and pour that in a jug, pour that in a bottle, and then work on that. It's anemic looking ink, as you would imagine. not as dark as it should be. But it's perfectly fine for testing out a pen to make sure that it's filling with ink and writing and all that other stuff. So this is purple ink I'm using, and this is from 1950 as well. I think it's Schaefer purple ink. Well, this one I neglected to keep the white areas white. I guess I did there a little bit, but it's not completely white. Again, there's a point at which I just start doodling and I stop drawing, I stop being realistic, and I just start making marks. So there we go. It's kind of nice on this silvery paper. So thank you, Dashwood, for your work. Dashwood, 1939 to 1945. Dashwood. Dagwood. Dagwood or Dashwood? Where's my... I think it's Dashwood. Dashwood. If it were Dagwood, it would... I'd like it, but it's Dash. Get the magnifying glass here. Does this work? Of course not. Dash. Dashwood. Thank you, Dashwood. You're welcome. Handcuffs.